Everybody, I'm talking to the library to make sure that this is working and I'm live. Do you see me? No, not yet. Hold on, maybe. There, it should be now. Hi, everybody. I'm on the phone with the library. And does it look good right now? Actually, I can see that. Wait, hold on. Sorry, everybody. Yeah, the other one was too, but okay, here we go. Hi, everyone. A little funny start, but I'm back. And I'm Shelley Boris. I'm going to start over again. And my first book is called The Seven Silly Eaters. So here we go. No false starts. Marian Hoberman is the author. Marla Frazee is the illustrator. And Harcourt Brace is the publisher. And here we go. We're going to start over. And there's the first picture. Not so long ago, they say, a mother lived just like today. Mrs. Peters was her name. Her little boy was named the same. Now, Peter was a perfect son in every way except for one. When Peter was just 1 year old, he did not like his milk served cold. He did not like his milk served hot. He liked it warm, and he would not drink it if he was not sure it was the perfect temperature. There's this picture, and I gotta get used to going the other way. But Mrs. Peters did not mind. She was a mother sweet and kind, and when his milk spilled on the floor, she patiently prepared some more. She'd take the bottle from the shelf and chuckle softly to herself. What a silly sort of eater is my darling baby Peter. Here's a picture. When Peter had not yet turned 2, another baby, sweet and new, was born, dear Lucy, small and fair, with big blue eyes and curly hair. But long before this child was grown, she had opinions of her own, of what she'd eat and what she'd not. She hated milk, both cold and hot, and warm was worst of all. Instead, whenever Lucy dear was fed, she bellowed for pink lemonade, not from a can, oh no, homemade. Sorry for those little beeps. Can't turn them off. But Mrs. Peters did not mind. She squeezed each lemon to its rind, while mopping milk up from the floor and patiently preparing more. She'd take the lemons from the shelf and giggle softly to herself. What a silly pair of eaters are Lucy dear and Peter Peters. There's the next picture. Now Lucy grew and Peter grew till he was 3 and she was 2. And who was one? Why, little Jack, with eyes so brown and hair so black, a happy baby, never cross. But all he'd eat was applesauce. Peeling apples by the pound, Mrs. Peter faintly frowned. She'd take the apples from the shelf and murmur weakly to herself, what a silly bunch of eaters are Lucy, Jack, and Peter Peters. Peter, Lucy, and young Jack had another brother, Mac. Mac was charming, round, and plump, but if his oatmeal had a lump, Mac would dump it on the cat. Mrs. Peters hated that. But since she loved her children 4, she'd strain the oatmeal 2 times more. She'd take it from the pantry shelf and mumble sadly to herself, what a foolish group of eaters are all my precious little Peters. Here they are, many Peters. Before another year was through, who came along but Mary Lou? She was darling, sweet, and bright, and had a healthy appetite. That is, as long as she was fed soft and squishy homemade bread. Poor Mrs. Peters got no rest, but still she did her very best. She'd take the flour from the shelf and she'd mutter feebly to herself, "What a fussy bunch of eaters are all my lovely little Peters." Look at all the Peters. There we go. A year rolled by, and children grew. "They really are a splendid crew," sighed Mrs. Peters, pinning pins and diapering her brand new twins. Little sisters, quick and smart, impossible to tell apart. But Flo liked poached eggs, Fran liked fried. If she mixed them up, they cried. Tired to the very bone, Mrs. Peters groaned a groan. She'd take the eggs down from the shelf and whisper weakly to herself, "What persnickety young eaters are all my 7 little Peters." There they are again. Whoa, look at all those children. Let's see, there you go, good view. Now time went by as time will do, and as it passed, the children grew. The problem was that as they grew, their appetites kept growing too. But not their choice of what to eat. Each child continued to repeat. They wanted what they'd had before. The trouble was they wanted more. She looks pretty upset. She looks very upset. What a mess. Creamy oatmeal, pots of it, homemade bread and lots of it, peeling apples by the peck. Mrs. Peters was a wreck. There she is. She wiped her brow and heaved a sigh. Another year was passing by. In fact, she realized with sorrow her birthday would arrive tomorrow. Drearily she shook her head, and wearily she went to bed. Looks like they're cooking up a scheme. She thought the children had forgot her special day, but they had not. At crack of dawn, they all began to carry out their secret plan. Mrs. Peters would be fed a birthday breakfast in her bed, a breakfast made from all the foods that kept them in such happy moods. First this one, and then this one. So while their weary mother slept, down the stairs the children crept, and from the cupboards and the shelves happily they helped themselves. Cheerfully they chopped and stirred, preparing what they each preferred. But despite the pains they took, since nobody knew how to cook, to measure things or make them hot, the more they tried, the worse it got. Loud. What a mess. There they all are. Start there. First, Mac's oatmeal turned out lumpy, which made poor Mac turn grim and grumpy. In fact, the lumps got him so cross he dumped them into Jack's applesauce. This bothered Jack so much he threw it in the dough of Mary Lou, who tossed the mishmash that made straight into Lucy's lemonade. And that put her in such a huff, she poured the icky, sticky stuff into the double frying pan that held the eggs of Flo and Fran, who flung the hodgepodge on the spot into the milk in Peter's pot. What a mess. Giant mess. Making a mess of showing you the pictures, too. But when they saw what they had done, they wished that they had not begun. They'd hardly slept a wink that night, and still things hadn't turned out right. And even though they'd tried their best, it hadn't worked. They were depressed. They'd be in trouble, too, unless they found some place to hide the mess. The oven seemed the perfect spot. They all forgot it still was hot. They stuck the pot inside, and then they all went back to bed again. There's going to be a surprise. The clock struck 6, but on they slept. Meanwhile, their mother softly stepped down to the kitchen, smelled the smell. What could it be? She could not tell. It smelled so good. She sniffed some more and opened up the oven door. She woke the children with her cries. They all came running in surprise. And in the kitchen what they found was Mrs. Peters dancing round. And in the oven, no mistake, a pink and plump and perfect cake. Wow, look at that cake. Let's see, starting here. There they go. There they go. I'll get it by the end. And as their mother danced with glee, she cried, "A birthday cake for me? A birthday cake still piping hot? To think I thought that you forgot. Now tell me, please, how did you make this pink and plump and perfect cake? So high and light and smooth as silk." "It's smooth and silk from all my milk," said Peter. "Lucy said it's pink from all my lemonade, I think." "And from my apples," added Jack. "My oatmeal made it soft," said Mac. "My bread dough too," said Mary Lou. Said Fran and Flo. As for its size, it was our eggs that made it rise. And everybody sniffed some more and danced around the kitchen floor. Dancing. Happy cake and happy birthday. They put the cake upon a dish and lit the candles. "Make a wish," the children cried, "before you blow." And Mrs. Peters did just so. And what is more, her wish came true, as birthday wishes always do. And from that day to this, 'tis said, the Peters family all is fed a single simple meal, just one, a meal that's good for everyone, a meal on which they all agree, made from her secret recipe, their secret recipe. They all take turns in mixing it, they all take turns in fixing it. It's thick to beat and quick to bake, it's fine to eat, and it's fun to make. It's Mrs. Peters' birthday cake. It's hard to see. I have a second book to read, and that book is another book about a group of people trying to get along and negotiate and share and sort of like what a lot of us are doing right now in our homes. Not a lot of social distancing, but let's pretend they're one big family. And this book is called First Second. This was written in the 1920s, and another favorite of my children. This is by Daniil Kharms, but it was translated from the Russian by Richard Pavir. The pictures are by Marc Rosenthal, and Ferris, Strauss, and Giroux are kindly letting me read this for the Desmond-Fish Library. So again, it's called First Second, and it's a silly story. First, I stepped out singing a song. Let's see if I can get this right. There we go. Second, Pete came up and said, "I'm going with you." And we both went along singing songs. Third, as we went along, we saw a man no bigger than a jug standing in the road. There he is. "Who are you?" we asked. "I am the shortest man in the world," he said. "Come with us," we said. "All right," he said, and we all went along. But the short man couldn't keep up with us. He ran as fast as he could, but still he fell behind. Then we took him by his hands. Peter took the right hand, and I took the left. The short man hung between us with his feet barely touching the ground, and we went on, all three of us, whistling songs. Fourth, whoops, let's see that tall guy. We went along like that, and what did we see but a man lying by the side of the road? His head was propped up on a stump, and he was so long that we couldn't see his feet. We came closer, and he jumped up and hit the stump once with his fist and pounded it into the ground. Then the long man looked around and saw us and said, "Who are you to go waking me up?" "We are three merry fellows," we said. "Do you want to come with us?" "All right," said the long man, and he took one step and went 20 yards. "Hey," shouted the short man, "wait for us." We grabbed the short man and ran after the long one. "No," we said, "you can't walk like that. Take little steps." The long man started taking little steps, but it was no use. 10 steps and he was out of sight. "Okay," we said, "let the short man sit on your shoulder and take one of us under each arm." There they are. Let's see how long the steps are. Still can't see his other foot. The long man put the short man on his shoulder, took us under his arms, and we all went on. "Are you comfortable?" I asked Pete. "Very. And you?" "I'm comfortable too." We began whistling merry songs. The long man walked along whistling songs, and the short man sat on his shoulder whistling for all he was worth. There's the next pictures. And fifth, we went on, and what did we see but a donkey standing right in our way? We cheered and decided to ride the donkey, but the long man tried first. He threw his leg over the donkey's back, but the donkey didn't even come up to his knee. The long man was just sitting down when the donkey up and walked away, and the long man sat full force on the ground. Then we tried to put the short man on the donkey, but the donkey had gone only a few steps when the short man lost his balance and fell off. He got up and said, "Let the long man carry me on his shoulder again, and you and Pete ride the donkey." We did as the short man said, and were all happy and went along whistling songs. Sixth, we came to a big lake. There was a boat on the shore. "Let's get into the boat," said Pete. The boat was just right for Pete and me, but we had some trouble with the long man. He had to sit all doubled up with his nose between his knees. The short man sat under one of the seats, but there was no room at all for the donkey. If the long man had not been in the boat, there would have been room for the donkey, but both of them were too much. "You know what?" said the short man. "If you, the long man, wade across the lake, then we can take the donkey in the boat, and there will be room for all of us." So we took the donkey aboard, and the long man waded across the lake, pulling our boat behind him on a rope. The donkey sat, afraid to move. Maybe it was his first time in a boat, but the rest of us were happy, and we went along in the boat whistling songs. The long man whistled songs too as he pulled us across the lake. And there they are, being pulled. Lots of whistling songs. Seventh, okay, here we are. We climbed out on the other shore, and there was a car. "What might this be?" asked the long man. There we go. "What's this?" asked the short man. "This," I said, "is a car. A car in which we are about to go for a ride," said Pete. We began to settle ourselves down in the car. Pete and I sat in the front seat. The short man climbed on the hood, but for the long man, the donkey, and the boat, there was not enough room. If we put the boat in the back seat and the donkey in the boat, it would have been all right, except that there was no place to put the long man. If we put the long man in the boat, there was no place for the donkey. If we put the long man and the donkey in the back seat, there was no room for the boat. Very complicated. I have a feeling they're going to figure it out. We had no idea what to do, but the short man gave us some advice. Let the long man sit in the back seat, he said, and let the donkey lie on his lap, and he can hold the boat up over his head. So the long man got into the back seat, and we put the donkey on his lap and gave him the boat, which he held over his head. Is it heavy? Asked the short man. No, it's okay, said the long man. I started the car and off we went, and everyone was happy except the short man, who wasn't very comfortable. He was on the hood. He bounced around like a roly-poly, but for the rest of us, we were fine, and we drove along whistling songs. 8th, we came to a town. As we drove down the street, here we are, there's everybody. People stared at us and pointed their fingers. Look at that, they said, a big oaf sitting in a car with a donkey on his lap and a boat over his head. Ha, ha, ha. And the one on the hood, no bigger than a jug. There they are. Look at how he's bouncing around. Ha, ha, ha. We drove straight to an inn, set the boat on the ground, put the car in the garage, tied the donkey to a tree, and called for the innkeeper. The innkeeper came out and said, "May I help you?" "Listen," we said to him, "would you mind if we spent the night here?" I think they were very tired. There's the innkeeper. Let's see. "Not at all," the innkeeper said, and he showed us to a room with 4 beds. Pete and I went to bed, but the long man and the short man couldn't make themselves comfortable. All the beds were too short for the long man, and the short man couldn't put his head on the pillow because the pillow was taller than he was, and all he could do was lean against it. But we were all so tired that we finally worked things out. The long man simply stretched out on the floor, and the short man crawled up onto a pillow and fell asleep there. There we are, in the bedroom. Next day, I see some cross moods. 9th, we woke up the next morning and decided to go on our way. Then, all of a sudden, the short man said, "You know what? I've had enough dragging this boat around, and I've had enough of this car. Let's go on foot." "I'm not going on foot," said the long man. "I'll get too tired." "You're such a big, strong fellow. You'll get tired?" "Of course I'll get tired," said the long man. "I just wish I could find the right size horse." "Where will you find the right size horse?" Pete interrupted. "You don't need a horse, you need an elephant." "And you won't find any elephants around here," I said. "This isn't Africa." It's silly. Uh-oh, look at that. Just as I said it, we heard a lot of shouting and barking outside. We looked out the window and saw an elephant walking down the street with a crowd of people following him. A little dog ran between his feet, barking with all its might, but the elephant walked calmly on without paying any attention to anyone. Oh, elephant, elephant. "Well," the short man said to the long man, "there's your elephant. Go on him and ride." "And you ride the little dog. He's just the right size for you," said the long man. "Right," I said. "The long man can ride the elephant, the short man can ride the little dog, and Pete and I will ride the donkey." And we all ran out into the street. There's everybody out in the street. 10th, we ran out into the street. Pete and I got on the donkey. The short man stayed by the gate, and the long man ran after the elephant. When he caught up with the elephant, he jumped on it, turned around, and came back to us. The little dog ran after the elephant, barking with all his might. As they reached the gate, the short man took careful aim and leaped on the little dog's back, and we all rode away. First the long man on his elephant, then Pete and I on the donkey, and last the short man riding the little dog. We were all happy and were whistling songs. We left town and rode on our way. But where we went and what happened next is another story. And that is the end of my second story. And thank you for watching, and stay safe and have fun and take good care of each other. Bye.